welcome to our event for today. Today, we have the pleasure of having all of our Speak Inspire graduates come forth today and share some of their stories. So make sure that today you're very well attentive, you have all your cell phones turned off, and you enjoy, because all these stories are going to be very, very personal from their own lives. And I know everyone's very nervous but excited to share them with you. So without further ado, we're going to introduce the first talk of today. And we're going to have Chung Soon talking about his relationship with money. So please welcome Chung Soon.
Is this on? We're all good? Everyone can hear me? Awesome. So a lot of people kind of think of me as some sort of personal finance expert. And I guess it is true that I do enjoy working with money. I get excited looking at different investment opportunities and how to maximize the use of money in general. But my relationship with money was never always this healthy. It's been a back and forth experience, but in order for you to fully understand what happened, you have to go back to when I was 8 years old. So when I was 8, my dad decided to buy me this game called Command & Conquer Red Alert. For those who aren't familiar, it's a strategy type of game where you build a base, you build up an army, and you attack the other team, right? And I don't really know what he was thinking when he bought me this game. I mean, an 8-year-old understanding strategy, not likely, but surprisingly, I actually won a few levels. Little did I know, those are all tutorials. So when I actually started playing the real game, I was having a blast building up all these little buildings, all these people, and then all of a sudden, boom, I was surrounded. The computer started attacking me, and I was able to somehow fend them off, but by the time all that was said and done, I had almost nothing left, and I wanted to give up right then and there. Luckily, my dad was actually just sitting next to me, and he said, hey, you can't just give up like that. You have to persevere through it. You have to learn from your mistake, do better next time, and take the initiative. So I don't actually remember what happened the rest of that game, but I do know that over the next few years, I got better and better at strategy games. It was a lot of fun, and it was pretty easy for me to win. And all these types of real-time strategy games started going into like the tycoon games, Railroad Tycoon, Zoo Tycoon, Roller Coaster Tycoon. And once again, it was a lot of fun for me to build these businesses and make things happen. Looking back at it now, I think that's when I started to look at my life more as a game as opposed to, and using money as a proxy of deciding how well I'm doing in this game of mine. So by the time I was playing all these tycoon games, I was already in high school. And during the summer breaks, my parents would actually get me to work summer jobs. Wasn't the most fun, but I did it anyway. And I made some money, and I never really had any use for it. I just kind of sat there, never really wanted to buy anything. And there was for me, like money didn't really mean much until university. And it was in first year when I turned 18. And that's when I was able to legally open up my own trading account for stocks. And so I did. I opened one up, I put some money in, and I bought my first ever company. And I remember sitting in the bathroom and scrolling up on my phone and noticing that I had just made $20. Holy crap, $20. A few summers ago, it would have taken me almost 2 hours to make. And here, in under an hour, I just made that exact same amount. I must be really good at this. And so I spent more and more time in the stock market, putting more and more money, and eventually made 20, 30, 50, hundreds of dollars a day until it was, I made 100, lost 100, made 100, lost 100, and I went through like that for the next 2 years. Over those 2 years, I probably did make a few hundred or a few $1,000s, but what I didn't know was just how addicted to the stock market I had become. So now we were in third year. And it was an accounting class, and the professor was actually just writing something on the board. I don't really remember what. It might have been like depreciation of assets or something. And everyone was staring at their screens. A group of people were just on Facebook, talking with their friends, scrolling through their news feed. Another group of people was on Reddit, learning about the newest random stuff so that they could share with me later. And me, I was staring at this number. I was staring at about 30,000. That was the amount of money I had in the stock market. And not only was it in the stock market, it was in one particular stock. And not only was it in one particular stock, it was in a penny stock. So for those who aren't familiar with what penny stocks are, they are literally stocks that trade for under $1. And the idea there is if it goes up even 1 cent, you'd be making multiple percentages just like that, right? And it was true. I mean, at the beginning, it was like it went from 30 to 32. And I was like, oh, crap, I just made 2,000. Oh, I think I can do a little better. And then went from 32 to 30 to 28. It should be okay. I mean, just one more. If it goes up just a bit, and I'll be break even, no problem. 24, 23. Down 7,000? Do I really want to sell out and admit of losing $7,000 just like that? No. It must go back up. 21, 18, 15. $15,000 lost in less than an hour. Do I sell out now? Can I really do this? No, I'll sell out when it goes back up a bit, and I'll just, if I can lose 9,000, I'll be okay. 12, 8, 5, 3. And before it hit 0, I had sold out. You see, it wasn't like this company went from $1 to 0 over one accounting class. It was because I found and exploited a bug in the trading software that allowed me to borrow multiple times what I actually had, which meant that every time it dropped even 1 cent, I was losing thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So that happened, and I remember throughout that day, my friends were asking me, hey, is everything okay? And there was no way for me to say, oh, no, for me to explain to them what happened, for me to admit that I just lost $30,000. So I had to pretend everything was okay. But in my mind, all I can think of was, what just happened? Did I really just lose 6 years of work money? Did I really just lose $30,000? No way. It must be some sort of dream. I must be dreaming. I'm sure I'll wake up soon. And I kept telling myself that over and over and over again. Until later that evening where I realized that it wasn't a dream, that this was reality, that I had literally just lost everything I had ever worked for up to that point. And I had to tell my parents. You see, before I went to university, I promised my parents that I'd take care of myself, that I'd be able to take care of myself financially in order for me to go to whatever university I wanted. But now, not only could I not pay for my next semester's tuition, I couldn't even pay for my next month's rent. And just thinking about what they would say, how they would react, it just got me more and more nervous. Are they going to yell at me? How frustrated will they be? How disappointed will they be? How disappointed will I be in not being able to back up what I said and promised? But I had to make the call anyway. I had no other option. And so I did. I made the call, and through the teary eyes, the snotty nose, and the messy voice, I explained to him, my dad, what happened. And I was really surprised that he took it a lot better than I thought he would. All he said was, hey, you're still alive. Everything will be okay. We'll help you through the next year. Little did either of us know at that point, the year after, I ended up switching universities. Before that, I was doing computer science and finance, right? And I got tired of the computer science part, so I really wanted to focus on the finance. In particular, I wanted to become an investment banker, because anyone who goes through finance, that's kind of the dream job, right? That's the status quo, perfect job, everyone respects you at that point. And in order for me to do that, I needed to switch over to a different university. Except the only problem with that switch was that I wasn't going back to first year. All the friends have already been created, or like friend circles have been created. How am I going to fit in? Well, I mean, what other option do I have besides going into going into different business clubs and trying to join one? So I started going through all the business clubs, and the first thing I saw was this thing called ASIC. ASIC? No idea what it was, no idea what they did, but they just so have happened to be holding an info session later that day. And so I went. So fast forward 4 or 5 months, I was on a plane to India because of it, Isaac. And for me, growing up and being born in Canada, I kind of know what a developed country was, right? And I thought I knew what a developing country was. But everything shifted as soon as I stepped off that plane. I had a chance to talk to this nonprofit whose main goal was to help children of beggars and educate them so that they can break this vicious cycle of poverty within the family. But at the same time, they started to fight with their parents who wanted these children to be out on the streets to make ends meet for that day. And in the evening, when the local Isaac members took me out to the bars or to restaurants, I noticed just how much happier these people were. Even though they had so much less than what we had in Canada, they seemed to be enjoying themselves so much more, as if nothing else mattered to them at that moment besides the people that they were with. It's safe to say that all my fundamental values were shattered during that trip. By the time I came back to Canada, everything about me had completely changed. No longer was I interested in this investment banker role. No longer was I interested in working 120 hours for a few $100,000. No, I wanted to make an impact to the world. I want to help people. I want to be happy. And knowing that, all this weight was lifted off my shoulder. And throughout the next few days, I was just so much happier. But even when I walked through the university, I still saw a lot of people who were very similar to me before I went through that experience, who were still just focused on what society deemed was success. And I wanted to change that. I wanted to show them what they could become and their lives they could live by going through something like an Isaac program. And so I spent the next few months learning everything I could about marketing, basic personas, the whole AIDA model, creating funnels, finding the proper leads. And I spent countless amount of hours reading blogs, reading books. And I somehow stumbled upon this blog called Mindvalley Insights. Didn't really know who they were, but their content was really, really good. Very practical and state-of-the-art at that point. And this Vishen guy, he seemed really cool. So I looked him up, and I found this video called The 3 Most Important Questions. Once again, no idea what that meant, but it sounded cool, and I went through it myself. By the time I finished, I had maybe a few things I had under experience, a few things under contribution, a few things under growth. But what I did know was I did not have to wait until I was 65, until I was retired to make all of these things happen. I can start making it happen right now. And that got me excited. It got me excited about everything I could be doing. But it also made me realize that money was still a factor. And so I got back into the stock market again. So a year later, being in the stock market, I was doing all right. I mean, maybe made a few $100s a month. And this time, I had maybe $10,000 to work with. So there was this one particular day. It was a really slow day. It's not like there's always action in the stock market, right? And for me, because I was always staring at the screen, I got really, really bored. So what did I end up doing? I was like, oh, well, if I can buy some options on a company like Google and sell it for, a $200 profit, that'd be a great day, a great month, a great week, a great month. And so that's exactly what I ended up doing. I put a few $1,000s in, and I just watched it shrink over the day. And I realized I just made the exact same mistake. And as that value started getting smaller and smaller, I could feel everything boil up inside of me again. I thought I learned my lesson. Why did I do that? Why did I give in to my boredom? And all of that just kept building up, building up, building up. And there was no way for me to get it out. That is, until my girlfriend got home. So when she got home, she asked in a very soft voice, "Hey, babe, can you come spend some time with me in my room? And it's not like her to talk in a soft voice. But for me, that didn't register. All I knew was I had a way out. What are you doing? Can't you see I'm busy? Go away. My eyes stared her down. My face flushed red. So she walked into her room. I heard a lot of sobbing, but I didn't care. I continued staring at the screen. 10 minutes later, I realized that I had to accept what had happened, that I made the exact same mistake, and I sold out. And then within another 5-10 minutes, the day was over. Luckily, because I had been able to get rid of all that anger, and because I had accepted what had happened, my consciousness came back. And I realized I haven't heard from her for a while. What happened? Hey, babe? No response. Hey, babe? Still, no response. Hey, babe, are you in there? No response. No music. That's weird. She doesn't normally take a nap. And so I opened the door, and that image will forever stay with me. So she was actually just sitting on her bed, cross-legged, changed out of her school clothes into a tank and shorts, but her face was a complete blank. All she was doing was staring down, staring at her left hand, staring, staring, staring. In her right hand was an X-Acto knife. The blade was out. I knew what I had just done. You see, I've always known that she had depression. And I know when she was in that state that she could not trust any of her friends with it. She could not go to her family. And the only person she had to turn to was me. And when she came home that day and talked to me in that soft voice, she was already telling me that something was wrong, that she needed my help. But because I was in the state that I was, I shooed her off. I told her to go away. I told her she wasn't worth my time. I had cut her last string of hope. So I was able to get the blade out of her hand. And I gave her a hug. And I kept saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There were a lot of tears that evening, a lot of sorries. And sometime during that day, I promised her that I would never let her go through that ever again. And I promised myself that I would never, ever let anyone go through something like that ever again because of something as stupid as money. But I still had aspirations. I still wanted to travel the world. I still wanted to live in different countries. I wanted to scuba dive. I wanted to skydive. I still wanted to experience everything the world had to offer. And I knew that money was still a factor in this. But this time, instead of spending all this time and effort on the stock market, I started to learn about money, how it worked. I learned about managing money. I learned about all the different investment options. And within a year or two, I ended up buying my first home and rented out 2 of the 3 rooms to roommates who was able to essentially pay for my mortgage. Fast forward another two years, here I am in Malaysia for an extended period of time, working at a company that I truly believe in without having to worry about how much I get paid. Having conversations with people that I know will become lifelong friends of mine. But most importantly, I knew how I was going to give back to society. You see, my story isn't unique. I'm sure you know people who have been abused because of money, who have relationships destroyed because of money, who had lost friends because of money. You might have lost yourself and your inner child because of money. But it doesn't have to be that way. Money can be a fuel for your aspirations. So if you do want that to be the case, I'm here to help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll move to the next speech.
Hello. Woo! It's cool. Huh? What? Oh. It's okay. Is it fine?
Okay, and we are back. And next up, we have Anna Maria with her talk labeled How I Found My Voice. So give her a round of applause.
Thanks, guys. So one of my favorite writers, Elizabeth Gilbert, said that the universe buries strange jewels within all of us and then steps back to see if we can find them. So how many of you think that you have a gift within you that you wish you could show to the world? Yeah, I feel the same way. Well, I grew up in a place where men had the last word. I grew up in a small religious community where preachers and teachers told us the rules we should live by and well, basically how things work, you know. And then they also told me that if I want to be a good girl, I should sit still, I should be quiet, and I should rather be invisible. And me being a good student, I got pretty good at it. I've learned how to be silent, and I was proud of myself. But somehow this voice wanted to come out in some way. And so I was thinking, if I can't speak, I can write. And so I started writing. And once I started writing, I never stopped. Once I was just writing for myself in my small diary every single day. I was healing. It was helping. Then I went on writing for the people who seemed different, just like me, who couldn't quite fit in, you know. And then I went on and I wrote to the whole world, and I don't even know when this has become my profession all the way. But I just kept on doing it because I loved it. And I thought that I can stay in this safe space and I can let my message out without actually using my voice, and I'm just gonna get away with it. But at some point I had to learn that speaking up is not about standing on a stage. Speaking up is not about recording your next live video. It's really about speaking your truth, saying no when it's time to say no, and saying yes when you should say yes. It is about using your own authentic voice. And I had to learn this the hard way. When I turned 19 and I was in the university, I was in a relationship. We moved together and things started to become strange. I was living in a place of fear, and I was terrified to say just about anything against his will. I was scared to come home from university because I knew he's gonna question me. And it doesn't matter what I say, he's not gonna believe me. I was terrified to the bone. I stopped talking to my friends because they kept on asking what's happening, and I just couldn't tell them. I hardly spoke to my family because I did not want to make them worried about me. And I just stayed away from doing anything that might make him angry, because he got angry once and he did raise his hand and it hurt me. My mouth was bleeding. He got angry twice and he gave me this small pill. I had no idea what it was. But he forced me to swallow it, and I just passed out. I woke up after about 16 hours. I had no idea how I got there. And as I woke up, I just kept on asking myself, how did I get here? I mean, how did I get myself in this place? And I had to realize at some point that me remaining silent is what created this. Me not speaking up is what got me into that place. One day, the neighbors heard the noise and they called the police. They came, they knocked on the door. He opened it and they asked, "Is there anyone else home?" And they saw me in the background, so they pulled me out. One police stayed with him, the officer, and the other one came with me, and he looked at me. And he asked, "Miss, is this man abusing you?" And I just froze. He said, "Is this man abusing you?" I said, "No, nothing happened. Please just go back." I was still not speaking. I kept this to myself, and then the next day, it was 5 a.m. in the morning. I was already sleeping, and he came home. He shook me up from my sleep. He smelled like alcohol and cigarettes, and he had some bruises because he got into some fight on the street, and I was like, I don't need this in my life. At this point, I just had enough. And I said, "I'm leaving." And I went up to my wardrobe. I started packing my stuff one by one. He came, he threw it all over the room. He broke my stuff. He came, he started walking towards me. And as I was walking back, I find myself in the corner of that room, facing him with his fist against my face. He said, "Shut up, you're not going anywhere." And as I was standing there, I did not feel any fear anymore. I did not feel anything at all. I just felt emptiness. I was still not speaking, but I waited for him to go back to bed. I silently packed up my stuff. I left that room and I never went back. I sat in the cab that day and I promised myself this was the last time I remained silent when it was time to speak up. I've made a promise to myself. And the thing is, when you commit to something and you set the intention, then somehow the opportunity always shows up. And for me, within a year, it showed up. There was a startup competition in my city. And you need to know that at this point, I had no idea what a startup was. I literally just Googled, what is a startup? And it sounds something exciting and where people can show themselves. So I'm like, I'm in. I signed up, I entered the hall, and I registered my name. And as I looked across the room, it was 30 middle-aged men running businesses, and me, 21-year-old Anna Maria. Hello. But it did not stop me. I mean, this is what I came for. And so I joined one of the teams, and we started working together. And they told us, the organizers, that there will be one person from each group. And on the final day, you have to present to the investors, but you will have only 2 minutes to sell the idea. So pick your person. And I was cool. I mean, there's no way it's gonna be me. I mean, I have the least experience here. It doesn't make any sense for me to go on that stage. But our mentor came to speak to us, and he said, "You're gonna speak." I'm like, "Me? I mean, why?" And he said, "Yes, you're the only woman in the room, so it's a good chance for us that you will stand out. And secondly, I see a potential in you." And when your mentor says that in your face, you don't say no to that. So I was like, okay. And I went on, and the final day came, and I found myself standing there among all the speakers. My legs were shaking like crazy. I was the most nervous. I was so sure that people in the first row can even see my chest pumping, because my heart wanted to jump out. And there I was. I said, I'm prepared. I have my slides up. I have the most convincing data. I have my team pictures. Everything is done. And I started pitching the idea to the investors, and they seemed interested. But about after a minute, something was off. And my team looked confused. The investors started pointing at my slides. And when I looked up, I realized the last thing they saw was my picture introducing the team, and then the projector just shut down. And the entire room froze. And I'm standing there, and it's happening. The only nightmare of any startupper, or basically anyone who's trying to convey a message, is that you prepare slides, and it just dies in the middle. And I had to do something, so I couldn't think of anything else. But I just looked at the investors, and I said, looks like my picture hacked the system. And I just went on telling my presentation. They cracked up laughing. I didn't care. I finished it, and I was happy. This is what I came for. I finished my speech. And so they gave the first prize to the first team, the second one, and we got the third one, which was not a bad place to finish. And then they said, there's one more prize we would like to give to someone. We would like to honor the best pitch of this event. And this prize goes for Anna Maria. And I did not want to believe it. The special prize for the girl who sits still and remains quiet. The special prize for the person who refused to speak up, who cannot say no. The one who's too scared to use her own voice. How could that happen? But what I've learned from this competition is that I was dying to do something. It was so important for me, but if that mentor doesn't come and tell me to go for it, I would have never raised my hand that I want to go on the stage. I would have never done that. And there's so many times we really want to do something, but we're waiting for that push to come from someone else. How many of you feel that you really want to go for something, but you may be still looking for someone to give you the permission to do it? How many of you are still waiting? Well, I would like to give you the permission right now to go and follow your dreams, because you already know that you have a gift inside of you that you wish you could show to the world. So just take the first step. Thank you.
nervous.
All right, and next up we have Seba asking us the question, can parenting change the world?
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, okay, it's my first time doing this thing. So, my first time when I was in stage, I was super petrified. I was super nervous. So, I asked my mom, like, what should I do when I'm nervous in front of people, when I'm nervous in front of an audience? I was in 5th grade. And she said to me something that I've never heard any speaker say, which I think is the biggest hack. You guys want to know it? And she said to me, just imagine everyone naked. I was like, okay, cool. So I did that, and ever since that time, I always imagine everyone naked. So you guys are looking pretty good. So we're here trying to push humanity forward by fixing and improving education. But what if we're missing the point? What if it's just part of the equation? So I believe that what we have to focus on is improving parental education. I mean, Mother Teresa said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. So what did she mean by this? And to me, she meant, if you want to change the world, go home and support your family. Go home and love your family. Go home and give your children empowering beliefs. Because if you do that, then that will protect them from the screwed up society and from the screwed up traditional education. I mean, how many of you here think that you were affected by the way that your parents raised you right now? So I'm going to share with you 3 lessons, no big deal, that my mom showed me and she embodied, which I have learned. And I think they portray these empowering beliefs. So the first lesson is about choosing to be the creator and not the victim. You see, when I was 12, my dad abandoned me, my mom, and my sister. I remember walking into my mom's room and she was holding a paper and she was crying. And it was weird to see my mom cry, so I came up to her. I'm like, Mom, what's the matter? And she told me, your dad just did a lawsuit against me, your mom, and my sister. You see, my mom and my dad, they were divorced. So he said that he didn't have any money, and he just stopped raising us financially and stopped raising us in any other way. So he legally abandoned us. And I never saw him again. And as hard as that sounds, I'm so grateful for that experience. Because the learning that I took was that my mom chose not to be the victim. She chose not to be in the sidelines and just roll over and die of shame. She actually chose to be the creator. She chose to raise us as a single parent, just her, and gave us the life that she always envisioned for us to have. So the second lesson is about questioning the dogma, questioning society. So when I was born without a religion. And in Mexico, being super narrow-minded and really a conservative society, there was something really strange. But this happened because my grandfather, who was Jewish, and my grandma, she was Christian, when they got married, they decided 52 years ago, which is still a shock back then as it is now, to raised my aunt and my mom without a religion. So therefore, I had no religion. But in Mexico, when all of my classmates in my school, there was always this question that came up, and it was like, what are you? What are you, Sebastian? What are you? And that was the question of saying, what do you believe in? But it was, what are you? So I didn't know, because I was not Jewish, but I knew some Jewish festivities. I was not Christian or Catholic, but I knew some because part of my family were part, but I was not anything. So that got me, like, I was so confused because I didn't have an answer. And you know how kids are back then, like, you don't know who you are, you don't know what are you. So I came back home and I was just so confused. And I asked my mom, Mom, what am I? And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, every kid just asks me, what am I? You know, am I Jewish? Am I Catholic? And like, what do I believe? And she just looked at me and she said, this is what you will answer. I was 6 years old. And she said, you are everything and you are nothing. You are everything and you are nothing. You are all of the good and none of the bad. You are all of the good values and none of the dogma. And for some reason, it just clicked in my mind. So I've always said that. Even to this day, when people ask me, what are you? I say, I am everything and I am nothing. And just kind of answers everyone. So this lesson comes from like questioning the dogma, going beyond the rules. And the third lesson is about not letting anyone limit you. You see, when I was in 12th grade, I was in a really Americanized high school. So the dream was to go to the US and to an amazing university. And I was a good student. So I wanted to go to a really good university because going to a good university meant that I was going to have an amazing life and I was just going to have the best jobs, the best wife, everything. Right? That was the dream. That was exactly what I thought in my mind. So if I went to a bad university, then my life was going to be just mediocre. So of course, there was a lot of pressure with this exam called the SATs. I don't know if someone knows it here, it's standardized test. And so with so much pressure because it's literally in my mind the exam that kind of said if you were going to be successful or not. Or at least that's how it felt in school. So I failed the exam. I did horrible. I did, I think, worse than most. So when I came with my vocal guidance teacher, I even remember his name, Mr. Robert Nation, and I asked him, I mean, what can I do to improve, right? I mean, I just taken this test once, right? And he just said, no, you know, maybe you're naturally good at it. I'm like, but how can this be, right? Learning to question from my mom, like, how can this be? I mean, I've just taken this test just once. And he's like, well, you know, that's it. You're just naturally good at it. So she's like, so what can I do? He's like, well, you know, you should just pick this ones, like the mediocre ones, like this, basically, just this type of universities, but not like the Ivy Leagues, you know, this like your limit. So you should focus on like this side. So I remember that, I think that was one of the saddest days in my life. So I came back home, like dragging my feet, and I'm not a sad guy. So if I'm sad, you notice it super quick. So of course my mom was like, what's the matter? I was like, well, I failed the SAT. And she's like, okay, but what did Mr. Nation said? And well, he said that I should just choose like the other universities, you know, like the mediocre universities. And my mom looked at me and she said, so do you know your limit? And I was like, what? And she asked me, yes, Sebastian, do you know your limit? And I was like, no. And she shouts and she told me, then how the fudge does he know your limit? If you don't know your limit, how does he know your limit? So that just taught me to never limit yourself and let anyone limit you. So if my mom wouldn't have taught me to question the dogma, to question the rules, and my mom wouldn't have taught me to choose to be a creator and not be the victim, and if she wouldn't have taught me to not let me or anyone limit myself, I wouldn't be here in front of you. I wouldn't be here in front of you. So I believe that we can all change the world. We need to focus on giving empowering beliefs to the next extraordinary generation. So I want to leave you with a quote of my mom that says, "The way that you raised your kids is the seed that determines what kind of crop we will be harvesting as society." Thank you very much.
All right, and we are back. Next up, we have Elaine, and her talk is about how to stop overthinking and listen to your soul. So give her a round of applause.
I have to make a confession right off. I was an addict. Not the usual kind of addict. Well, maybe it is a usual kind of addict in our society these days. I was a left brain addict. You see, from the time I was a little girl, everyone kept saying, "Elaine, you're so smart. You're so brilliant." They didn't say you're beautiful, you're funny, you're cute. It was you're so smart. So I grew up thinking, oh, this must be what my value is, my brain. In fact, I had a nickname that was given to me by people in my school when I was, 4th grade. They would say, "Elaine the Brain." And I hated the name so much. I was taken to special classes because my IQ was high. I was separated from people. I was supposed to feel special. I felt isolated. But at the same time, when people are telling you that you're special in some way, you start to believe it as a child, right? Oh, well, I must be special. My brain must be what's special about me. So I started to believe that I was special because I had an exceptional brain. So I thought, well, that's what I must do with my life is, not consciously, of course. When you're 7 or 8, you're not consciously thinking any of these thoughts, but unconsciously I was being programmed to believe that I was special because of my brain. So on one hand, I thought, that's what I must go with. That's what I must use in my life, right? That's my gift, is my beautiful brain. But at the same time, inside I thought, gee, I thought there'd be more to me than my brain, but oh well, let's go with that. Let's go with this brain. So in school, of course, I got the best marks. I can remember even in math classes in university, I took classes all the way through calculus, and the professor would say, "Hey, the girls in our class are beating the boys. Boys, you better get started and do better. We can't have girls beating you." And that made me, of course, want to do better even. So I was like, okay, I can be even smarter. I can really top the class, right? So I'd get the highest marks. But it really didn't mean that much to me. It wasn't as though I felt that I was valued. I just kept going with it. I was addicted to feeling special because people were telling me that's what was important. So I want to, in this talk, tell you what I learned about what really is important and where our true intelligence comes from. Because for so much of my life, I thought my intelligence came from my brain. When in truth, what I've learned is it comes from something far greater than just me. Far greater than this beautiful organ that I still love and admire, and I'm glad I have. And what I want to tell you is that there's 4 ways we can live more fully in our life, more authentically, without having to overuse our brain, and to have more ease by tapping into this thing I call soul intelligence. Now, soul intelligence is something that you have to feel. It isn't something that I can describe necessarily, but perhaps you've felt at a time when you've had maybe some difficult moments and you had an answer, and it came from somewhere else. So I want to relate to you how I came to feel in my soul intelligence and how I let go of my left brain addiction. And I had so much more ease in my life once I did that. It started with a story. I was at the pinnacle of my left brain addiction. I was finishing my PhD at the University of California, Santa Cruz. It's a very cool campus. We've got like redwood trees, and we've got really amazing professors and people who are like at the top of their field, right? And I was in this department who the founder of my field was the chair. And I had 6 months left of my PhD program. And I felt pretty special because I'd done it 5 years of this intense intellectual masturbation, I call it. Where you're really like in the brain all the time and you're like having fun and you're having like almost group sex and stuff like because you're all in the brain and you love it so much, but it's like too much. I was walking on the campus, not thinking of anything particular, but I suddenly noticed something. I was walking and my head, I noticed everything about me and my sensation was in my head. I wasn't paying any attention to the rest of my body. In fact, I didn't even feel like I had a body. I felt like I was floating as this head with just nothing almost below me, no sensation, no feeling. And I thought, oh my God, I have completely lost something important. I've lost my body. I've lost something else in me that's, I don't know what it is, but I want to recover it. So in that day, I made a commitment. I made a commitment that I would try to recover whatever it was I'd lost. I didn't know what it was, but I felt completely imbalanced, that this world of the intellect was not, that was not enough, right? That was not enough to live a happy life. And of course, when you ask and make a commitment, you have to be ready to receive. So indeed, about a couple months later, after I asked, which is the first thing of listening to your soul is to ask, I started to receive. I had made a decision that I was going to move to Australia. My partner was in Australia. We'd been back and forth for a couple years, and I'd made a decision to move, but I wasn't still completely comfortable with it, but I decided I would do it. And for those of you who use meditation, I was meditating. I'd started meditating a couple years before. So I was sitting in meditation, just clearing my mind. And suddenly, unexpectedly, this strange thing came into my head. It felt like a sensation first in my head, like a little bit of a change. And then suddenly it was like something had just dropped into my head as a message. And I felt it before I heard it. I felt something. And then I heard this message. And it said, hey, if you go to Australia, it's a good idea because the US is going to turn to shit. The second part of the message was, and if you go, you're going to die there. Whoa, hey, this is kind of, did I eat something weird for breakfast? Like, shit, what's going on in my head? I never heard things like this before, right? I mean, I did drugs, but that was a long time ago. So it wasn't that. And this was the year 2000, about April. I was going to move in July 2000 to Australia. And I thought, Jesus, well, that's a lot of information. Could you give me a little more, please? So receive. So you see, I was starting to receive now. I'd asked. I wanted to be fuller. I wanted to just get out of my head. Now we're starting to receive. And I thought, well, what do I do with this? This is weird. Like, you know, what are you telling me here? I should go to Australia, but now you're telling me I'm going to die there. What kind of information is this? this is what happens. You have to then deal with this information and decide what to do. So I decided I would go. Because what the heck, we're all going to die sometime. I mean, why not try Australia? Can't be a bad place to die. I moved to Australia. 9/11 happened. Everybody remember 9/11? And I thought, oh my gosh. Hey, after the years went on after 9/11, I was in Australia. I thought, oh geez, the first part of the message. Yeah, it is looking a bit less nice in the US right now. It's kind of been looking that way for a little while. It wasn't until 2009 that the second part of the message started to become known. So this is just a warning for those of you who want to listen to your soul intelligence. It is always telling you things, but sometimes you don't pay attention. So by this time in 2009, I was trying to pay attention to my, you could say, my soul, my intuition, my guidance, but I wasn't doing it all that well. I was still a left brain addict. I was still teaching in university till 2006. I was still thinking and overthinking and worrying and trying to control my life. Any people try to control their life? I'm still trying to do that sometimes. And it came to the point in 2009 where many events, and this is what I think the universe conspires to create this. Okay, you're not paying attention enough to what I'm trying to tell you. We'll give you a little more pressure. So events conspired in 2009 where I was going through a very messy divorce. I had a job I didn't like. I had multiple pressures and stress, and I was still trying to figure it all out up here. I wasn't really listening to here. I knew I shouldn't have taken the job, but I hadn't listened. And at that point, all of these things were converging on me so incredibly strongly that I was starting not to sleep at night. I was getting thin. I didn't realize what was happening to me. But the mind just wouldn't stop. At night, the mind wouldn't stop. It kept overthinking, wanting to figure things out. I couldn't stop my mind, even though I was meditating. And then one day, as it was starting to get worse and worse, no sleep, couldn't stop, I felt this message arrive again. Boop, like the same one. A mailbox, I call it. And this time the message said, hey, you're about to go through something really difficult, but you're going to make it through. And I thought, oh, shit, why do I get these messages without much information? Can't you tell me more? And sure enough, in the next few weeks, it all just collapsed. My mind collapsed in a way I'd never experienced before. I could actually feel the mind just give up. These days they call that depression, severe depression. The mind just collapsed. And I spent a little while in this black hole where the mind just doesn't work and nothing works, and you think you're on another planet, and you think, will I ever get back to what I used to be? But I remembered the message, you see. The soul intelligence had sent me the message. You're going to get through this, right? I'm not going to die. Though I tried to die once during that time. But I didn't. I chose not to, because I knew the message was true, you see. I could make it through. And I'm so thankful for that day, that I kept remembering every day that message. And when I came out, I vowed that I would start listening better. I would start listening to the intelligence that we are, not just here, but in a deep way. We are intelligent. We are highly intelligent, but it's not our own intelligence. And I vowed I would never overuse this organ again for what it isn't meant for. And I learned through that experience to let go and not try to control everything. So that's the third thing. You ask, you receive, and you have to learn to let go. Because once you learn to listen to your soul intelligence, it's in charge. It always was, but you thought you were. So through that experience of the depression, I started to really learn that there is something greater than us. There is something vaster than us that if we allow in, it will guide us. And the brain is a beautiful organ. We must never not appreciate it. But at the same time, there is deeper intelligence that's through us that if we come to know that, we will experience more grace and ease in our life. So sometimes people ask me, about the depression, and I thought, it was the greatest gift. Because I had to let go. I had no choice in that experience. There was no choice but to let go and trust. And that's the fourth thing. Once you learn to let go, you must learn to trust. And that's the hardest thing for our mind, because we want to trust that our mind knows everything. And it doesn't. So I want to leave you with a quote, something that I've learned and I'm still trying to learn. This is a process. It's not a one-time thing. We do it every single day of our life. We have to learn to ask, receive, let go, and trust. There's an author, Yule Anderson. And he says, guidance does not come from effort or from will. It is achieved by complete acceptance in a power greater than ourselves. It is achieved by complete confidence in a power greater than ourselves. I wish for you that you find that confidence and that acceptance. Thank you. Ah, oui. Thanks.
All right, and now we have finally come to our last talk of the day. We're going to listen to Marta and her quest to build authentic organizations.
Hi guys, I have a question to you. What do you think we should do as a company or as an organization to capture hearts and minds of our people? Any ideas? Elaine? Great, yes. Any more ideas? Come on, proactive Mindvalley people. So my quest for understanding authentic and heart-centered organization started a long time ago, and what I'm going to share to you with you today is still as a learning process for me. The research and study is not ready, but one thing that I understand from what I've learned so far is that one of the way on how can we improve our lives and make this world a really better place is through contributing to build an authentic organization. So the very first fundamental is that these organizations, with what I found, they really build trust every day, everywhere, and with everything what they do. They build it with their employees, with their partners, stakeholders, competitors. Trust is everywhere where you see and what you will see in these organizations. There are many ways how you can build this trust, and one of them is truly encourage employees to share their most vulnerable stories from their lives, something that you will only probably share with your boyfriend or girlfriend, not even with your parents. In the spirit of trust, I would like also today to share with you one of the stories that I don't always share as much. I had this always question to myself, where does my resistance come from? And persistence and believing in what I do and what I want to achieve. And this comes from being in the 90s, back in the post-Soviet Ukraine. And those times in Ukraine were very challenging. And of course, it was also challenging for my family. We were very poor. We didn't have enough money neither to pay for electricity or to buy fancy food. So I really remember that moment when we were sitting in the apartment where there was no electricity. And in order to cheer us somehow up, my mom would find the chocolate from somewhere, I don't know from where, and we would just start sharing stories, telling how was our day, and so on. And one phrase what she would always tell, and throughout this year, and especially in those moments when we would share our stories, she would always say, keep believing in miracles and good things happen to good people. So after 15 years of financial struggles, we finally managed to build a better family. We managed to travel abroad. Financial abundance finally happened, and this quote, keep believing in miracles, somehow reappeared when I started to do the quest, and when Lisa started asked us to be reminded of our stories from our past. So coming back to the authentic organizations, how can we create those spaces where people would be able to share this kind of stories, even more vulnerable, every day with their teams, with their managers, in the most stressful times, in the most happiest times? So what I see is that truly authentic organizations build the systems and processes when these stories are shared almost every day. The next thing what authentic organizations do is they embrace transformations. They let their employees fail and rise, make mistakes, learn from them, and become better humans, professionals, employees. I started in HR, People and Culture team 4 years ago, and I feel very proud to where we were 4 years ago and where we are now, what kind of team we have. And this period of time was full of happy moments. We received external awards, but we also had not very happy moments, and we had really gray periods of time in this team. And one of them is connected to the period of time when we had money being stolen from Mindvalley, creating a scam of companies that were all created in order to lure money out of Mindvalley. And this was everything created by one person in the team. To tell the truth, to say that we didn't suspect something, it would be a lie. We did suspect something, but we kind of maybe were afraid, or maybe were not, to question or to dig deeper, to understand what was happening. And even me, myself, I was so focused on my growth, on my career, on becoming better in what I do, that I really failed to recognize that this was happening. And it was happening, unfortunately, for a long period of time. Imagine something in your team happening like this, and you understand when it's too late. So I believe that authentic organizations really allow its employees to understand these mistakes, to acknowledge them, to learn from them, and that could help them to become better as an entity and to unite its people. So that's what happened in our case. In Mindvalley really embraced it as a mistake, and we learned so much from that. Authentic organizations embrace different leadership styles. And I'm speaking here to both about women and men leadership styles. One day it can be as strong as a thunderstorm, as a heavy rain, or as a deep ocean. Another day it can be as easy as a breeze, as a morning breeze, as a fresh air, as warm as the sunshine. Truly authentic organizations embrace both these styles, and they are equally present in them. My search for truly examples of women leadership started not so long time ago. And what I saw is I could find really amazing examples of men who were inspiring in sort of way to other people instead of me. I could learn from them skills, like for example, from Warren Buffett, I could learn how to invest, I could learn how to bring my body to the next level from Wim Hof, or I could learn how to be more productive from Tim Ferriss. But I somehow couldn't find any great example of a woman leader that would truly inspire me to be a better person, to lead people with my heart, and to inspire others. I couldn't. And I started looking, and yes, there were Oprah Winfrey, there were Angela Merkel, Sheryl Sandberg, who truly inspire me. But someone whom I could invite for lunch or ask for advice, unfortunately, I couldn't find. And that's how we decided that we wanted to create a small group called Women at Mindvalley, where we will be sharing these ideas, at least supporting each other. So authentic organizations recognize that different leadership styles, different communication styles can coexist together, and they can support each other and create more value for the company. And funny enough, the most profitable companies in the world are those who recognize that both leadership styles are needed to create a better workplace and better business. Authentic organization embrace this concept of radical candor. How many of you have heard of it? I think we've been talking a lot about it, right, in Mindvalley. Great. So yes, as you guys know, radical candor is something where you deal with the person, when you lead the person in a way where you are caring personally about this person and you are not afraid to challenge the person directly. Imagine if every manager out there was so good that he or she would care about you as a person and were not afraid to really tell where you did a mistake or where you didn't behave according to your values or your principles. So how can we really inspire our organizations to talk about this concept, to embrace it every day, to spread this message of radical candor with everything what we do? The next thing that authentic organizations do differently, they create a space of total transparency and open communication. When Satya Nadella took over in 2014 as a CEO of Microsoft, he did a bit different things that the normally CEO would do. The first thing, he asked his team to read the book Nonviolent Communication. And the second thing what he did was that he started traveling across US and other countries in where Microsoft is present, and he started to share a lot about his dreams, his personal stories, vision, his values. He also spent a lot of time explaining very patiently what kind of decisions did he already do and what kind of decisions is he going to do. In this way, he created a lot of space for long, as we would think, like maybe even time-wasting communication space. But in fact, in the span of 3 years, Microsoft really managed to transform its culture and coming back to the innovation and innovating on the products that they do. And one of the employees who has been with the company probably longer than 10 years says that one of these acts, when Satya was talking and creating the spaces for communication, it really allowed Microsoft to break through. And the last thing, what from my research that I'm doing, is that authentic organizations cultivate and celebrate givers. There is a lot of research about who are the givers, and you can find a lot about that. But the most prominent one has been done by Adam Grant. He also wrote the book Give and Take. And what he found is that the givers is someone who is selflessly helping and giving away everything. In the context of the business, right? These are the people who are helping everyone without expecting anything in return. Adam also found that these people can be at both ends of a success curve. They can be both, either very successful or they can be not successful at all. You know those situations when you think that givers are kind of treated as a doormat or people are abusing their kindness, right? Yes, he says this kind of people exist. But also the givers are those who rise in the success ladder and in the organizations, and they are treated as role models. In Mindvalley context, we can find a lot of givers, actually. And as I was doing this research, I found like, look, in my organization, I see so many of them. One of them is Seba, who is teaching Emmanuel how to create online business and passive income. And so Emmanuel could help his family in Uganda and his friends. Another one is Chung-Sun, teaching us about personal finance, and I'm his student as well there. So how can we really celebrate those people who selflessly giving away something that they know, that they have, their contacts, their ideas, without expecting anything in returns? There are also other types, of people in this context. One of them is matchers, those who give and expect something in return. And there are those who are takers, who always take and never return anything back. One of the most prominent story which I found about the giver, and I was very amazed by it, is about the Abraham Lincoln. He has been considered as one of the best givers in the history of politics. Think about it. How can you be a giver in the politics, right? Abraham Lincoln proved this to be wrong. He actually wasn't selected. He was running many times to be a senator of one of the US states. He was running to be a member of the parliament. And all 3 times he failed. He failed to be one. And he failed just because for one reason. Towards the end of elections, he would always give away his spot to his competitor. And when asked, why would you do that, right? He would say, because these people have better skills. They are more prepared, they are more ready, they're better public speakers than I am, and I believe in their ideas. Imagine for 3 times you would give up something, but you would already out there, you are almost grabbing it. But these actions have led him to become a president of US towards the end of his careers. And the funny thing, he hired 2 of those people whom he gave up his spots earlier, he hired to be part of his team. And he always built the team where there would be people who would challenge him and who would be his competitors because he wanted to learn from them that much. So this story of a really prominent giver really inspired me, and I understood how much we are not doing that, right? How much we can celebrate the givers in our organizations and support them and really create this environment of selfless giving. Okay, so coming back to my very first question that I had to you guys, how to capture hearts and minds of people? Well, my answer to you is that what if we all contributed to building such authentic organizations? By building trust, by embracing transformation, by cultivating givers, by celebrating different leadership styles, both women and men, and by creating the space for open and transparent communication. I really believe that authentic organization is something that we owe to ourselves, to our people, to our families, to our society. And each of us can make this happen. And we can do it starting on Monday when we come back to this office. Thank you.
All right, so that was the last of our speeches. Can we get all of our lovely Speak and Inspire graduates to come on the stage for one last applause? Give it up for all of our brave speakers. Congrats. We love you guys and appreciate you guys so much for sharing all of these wonderful personal stories. And I think you guys have definitely inspired quite a bit of us. And thank you guys so much for the live stream, for all those who are watching, because I know there are a few people. So that's it. That's the end of the event. Thank you guys for coming.